Okay, looks like we've got quite a few participants here, so let's start. Let us know also if you've taught science, or if you do teach science, or if you taught English about science in your classes. Okay. As I was just saying, you will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout in the next few days. If you don't receive it, the email there is for mlaworld.com. That comes to me. I will make sure you get one. Okay. And if you don't hear from me, send me another email and I'll make sure I get it. Okay. This webinar has all the handout has all the information from here and a lot more. We've got a few useful links to do some other exercises, some other videos, some other pages with information on. And then we've also got a couple of worksheets that you'll see here, including the ones for the videos and one for the activity that we look at. Okay. So feel free to follow up with that. Okay, just to start talking, okay, I'm sure you know, let me know if you know who these people are in the pictures, okay, and then, let me know in the chat if you know who they are, the photos on the left. I'm sure, as you know, that one of the great achievements of humanity is our investigations into the natural world and the laws that govern life and the universe. Much of this research was undertaken in Britain and the USA, not all of it. I mean, Italy obviously has very noble scientists, particularly Galileo, for example. Okay, one of the first people who would probably consider himself a scientist. But particularly the Royal Academy, something that we often teach students about in the civics lesson, and also things like the Manhattan Project, the development of the atom bomb. Not to forget people like Newton, Faraday, Darwin. Okay, also Crick, Watson, and Franklin. Okay, in case you didn't get that, that's the three people in the middle. Okay, with Rosalind Franklin on the left. I'm not sure which one is Crick and which is Watson. Okay, and not to forget the late Stephen Hawking. Okay, on the bottom there. It's true that science has really found a home in English-speaking countries, and it is one of the things where once I think German was the language of science, but it's absolutely clear that science is, scientists in general speak to each other in English now, okay, whether they are English or whatever, okay. An estimated 98%. Okay, so almost all of scientific publications are written in English. So in the modern world, being a scientist really means having a sound command of English. If you're not writing the papers, you're going to have to be reading them. And so, it's not enough to be getting by on Italian. Okay? Let me know in the chat if you've taught science in English or used science topics in your English classes. Let me know. We always have some objectives, so let me just tell you about these ones. So I hope by the end of this session, you should be able to better plan speaking and writing activities in English based on science topics. So whether you're talking about science in your own classes, okay? Incorporate themes of science into your English lessons. Okay. Roberta's taught about the solar system. That's good. Okay. And also to use English as a classroom language for science lessons. So again, if you're an English teacher, fantastic. If you're a science teacher, it might help you as well. Okay. How many sciences are there? Okay. Now, I don't know if there's a particular number, okay, but there's a lot of types. Okay. What we're going to have a look at this video, which again, the link is in the handout. Okay. And we're going to see about all the different names. Okay. Good idea to get your students to come up with as many sciences and the names of the types of scientists. So if you have biology, we talk about a biologist, okay, before watching the video so that they can check if they're correct. Okay. Obviously, the language of science is often not so far from Italian. These words often come from Latin or Greek. And so we're not talking about things that are totally Anglo-Saxon in English, but you know, it really does help because obviously the words change a little bit, and particularly the pronunciation quite often changes. Okay. I must admit, well, I didn't make this video, and there are a couple of grammatical errors here. So if you notice the grammatical errors, let us know in the chat. Okay, let's watch this.
Different types of scientists. Archaeologists. I study about the remains of ancient people, their bones, and their belongings, to see what life was like a long time ago. Astronomer. I study about the universe that includes outer space, sun, moon, stars, and planets. Biologist. I study all forms of life that include humans, animals, plants, and bacteria, about how their body works and how the environment affects each organism. Botanist. I study about plant life that include identify new plant species and evaluate their parts and uses, and study the effects of pollution such as acid rain on plants, and work toward environmental protection. Chemist. I study about elements, atoms, molecules, and matters and its changes. Geologist. I study about rocks, minerals, and Earth's landforms include mountains, valleys, plateaus, glaciers, hills, plains, and deserts. Meteorologist. I study about the atmosphere and weather. Oceanographer. I study about the ocean that include marine life of plants and animals, ecosystems, ocean circulation, and the geology of the sea floor. Physicist. I study about motion, forces, and energy to explain the way things work. Zoologist. I study about animal life that include physical characteristics of animals and animal behaviors. Motion, forces, and energy.
Okay, big button. Sorry, I tried to switch that off. Yeah, just a few people noticed this. There's a few errors in there. Look, I think it's a useful video, but there are a few errors in there. So we do have the sun, the moon, the environment. Okay, so certainly the use of the article wasn't fantastic there. And then also, as Sylvia said, generally don't say study about something. Okay, you study something. Okay, and also the verb include probably should be includes. Okay. That said, I think it's you know, the types of scientists they are, and you can listen to the pronunciation. Okay, so that's quite good. There was a problem with desert. Okay, they pronounce it as dessert, which sounds like the thing that you eat after dinner. Okay, so anyway, I think it's a useful video anyway, and we've got a little exercise on that, the worksheet there in the handout. Okay. Next, we're going to look at writing a scientific report. Okay. Again, even if your students aren't going to be writing a scientific report, they may be reading them and maybe not in their school career, but in the university career, quite possibly. And it always helps to sort of have this structure. Okay, so they do follow specific rules and must include specific information, such as, I mean, not all of them, including all of them, but these are sort of things that you will find in lot. Obviously, must have a title, which clearly explains what it's talking about. The aim of the experiment, if it was an experiment. The aim of the study, if it was a study. Okay. The hypothesis, an introduction to the relevant background theory. That is, you know, the research that's been done before. The method, risk assessment, results, often including diagrams or charts or tables. Okay, may also include a diagram, particularly if we need to explain the apparatus. Discussion of the results, okay, often the most important part, okay, because the results are obviously why we do this, but you know, obviously the method is very important, so it can be replicated. And a conclusion, sort of considering the results and how they relate to the background theory or previous research in that field. Okay. We also use 2 grammatical structures when writing reports. So things that you'll find in every scientific report. Write in the chat if you know what they are. One is a tense and one is a form. Okay. Sylvia's got it. A passive would be one of them. So passives are very common. Okay. Sylvia, I don't think it's the present simple. Generally, present simple, not so much. Okay. But it is another tense. Okay. Not sure. Look, we do use zero conditionals for sure. Okay, that could be true. What is the tense we find in a zero conditional? Let me know if you know that. Okay, zero conditionals for sure, because we use that. Present simple in a zero conditional. However, when you're talking about the experiment, we're going to use the past simple. So past simple, you're going to use it in the sense of, we added this solution, we surveyed 20 people, we discovered, we, you know, so these are the sort of things. And again, instead of starting with we, you might use the passive, okay, in the sense that, I don't know, ammonia was added to water instead of we added ammonia to water. So I would say the most common structures you're going to find there are the past simple, because you're talking about an experiment or a study that is concluded, okay? And often the passive, basically the passive, partly because in an article, for 2 reasons. One, we want to, as we'd say, foreground the object rather than the subject. The object of the verb is often more important than the subject, who is probably going to be the experimenters. They don't want to keep starting every sentence with that, okay? With we, or maybe even if they use it in the third person, the experimenters, okay? The other reason is sometimes just to make this sort of maybe not so clear what the subject was, okay? So to remove the experimenters totally from it. So being familiar with the passive is really going to help your students understand and write scientific reports. And I would say, particularly in the present simple, okay, particularly for laws, okay, you know, if we are using a zero conditional, or in the past simple, okay, for describing methods and results, okay. So those things are going to be really useful, and you know, obviously they're not only scientific reports, newspapers, crime writing, anything. We often use past simple, and we often use the passive forms. Okay. This is a great video about the language of science. We've got a worksheet for this one. Okay. In less than 4 minutes, excuse me, it will teach us 55 scientific terms, okay, of which we've got some questions on the handout. It's in the, well, the worksheet that's in the handout. Okay.
Hi, today we're talking about science and technology. And after watching this video, you will know about 55 new words and phrases related to the topic. Also, subscribe to my Instagram where I post lots of useful stuff every day, like grammar cards, comparing similar words, or discovering additional meanings of familiar words. That's all on Instagram, and you can find the link in the description of this video. But now let's start with science and technology. There are different branches of science, for example, physics, biology, chemistry, and others, and it's important to know how the scientists who work in these areas are called. A physicist, a biologist, a chemist. But be careful with the word chemist because in the UK, it's another name for a pharmacist, a person whose job is to prepare and sell medicines. Scientists develop or formulate theories which they must either prove or discard. To do that, they carry out research, experiments, and tests. With these words, you can also use the verbs do, perform, and conduct. The most important discoveries are often called breakthroughs, and they seriously change the way people live. For example, the discovery of penicillin gave rise to antibiotics, and the invention of semiconductors led to the appearance of almost all modern electronics. Science and technology go hand in hand. Modern computers and smartphones, everything that is technical, electronic, or digital is based on scientific research and development. Most commonly, technology is associated with such words as gadget, device, appliance, equipment, machine, and some of these words, some such words are easily confused. So let's take a look at them. A machine or a vehicle. A machine is a piece of equipment that has moving parts and works on mechanical power designed to do a certain job. A vehicle is a type of machine used as a means of transport. All vehicles are machines, but not all machines are vehicles. A washing machine is not a vehicle, for example. What's the difference between a device and an appliance? A device is a more general notion and can be applied to literally any piece of equipment, especially electronic, smartphones, TVs, computers. An appliance is a device that has a specific, often singular function for household use. For example, a blender, a toaster, a hairdryer. So any appliance is a device, but not any device is an appliance. A smartphone is not an appliance. Technology may be modern, cutting edge, or state of the art, which means new, the most recent, or outdated, dated, and obsolete, which is the opposite of modern. We're living in the world of digital technology, which is based on storing data in the form of digital signals. Everything is digital now, electronic tools, systems, devices. Prior to digital revolution, all technical and electronic things were analog, based on a different type of storing and processing information. Artificial intelligence is the ability of a computer or a robot to perform tasks that are usually done by humans, and it is thought that AI technology will shape our future and even take away most people's jobs. How about you? Are you afraid of artificial intelligence? Do you believe it may cause more problems than do good to the humanity? I want to know your opinion. Write about that in the comments, please. And this is all for now. I hope this video was useful. And if you have any questions, also write them in the comments.
Okay, I think it's a really useful video, as you can see, to distinguish between a few terms, give you a few expressions like state of the art or outdated, which are great expressions that you often find and can often use. Okay, we've got some questions about that. Obviously, AI and chatbots and things like that. I think we could, in fact, I am planning a new webinar on that. So using ChatGPT, well, maybe at least other AI, since that one's blocked in Italy at the moment. But some information about those, the use of AI, which ones we can use, how we can use it. I've got to do a bit of research myself on that because I'm not so familiar with them. Okay. What you could also do is get students to present their own presentation or create their own presentation on their favorite scientific subject. So this is always a good idea to, the students are spending a couple of hours in English during the week, but they're obviously spending hours studying other subjects, generally science and technology subjects, often, at least in most schools. And so why not get them to talk about what they're studying in those other subjects, what they found interesting this year. I mean, coming to the end of the school year, that could be a great idea to say, not only what they've learned in English this year, but what they've learned in their scientific subjects, whether it's biology, geography, things like that. They're all types of science in some way. Okay? So you could get them to do that. It might be worth giving them some of the background for this. These videos, again, I've included the video in the handout, and you could use this, and he's got other videos as well, so that would be great. Okay. Sylvia asked if it's PCTO. I think so, for sure. Okay, so you could incorporate these as, sort of more specific skills lessons. Okay. Task-based learning. We're going to have a webinar in a couple of weeks about task-based learning. It's a method we often use in MLA in our centres and online, and it's a great method that if you're not familiar with it, you should become familiar with it. Anyway, we'll have a look a little bit about this. After studying a couple of scientific laws, you could have a look at these. I've included these websites to look at some scientific laws, whether we're talking about, laws of thermodynamics, the theory of relativity, or we're talking about gravity and things like that. Okay, it could be great to ask students to propose their own scientific law. I've put scientific law in inverted commas here because I think this could be a quite light-hearted activity, something that helps them use their language of science, but also in a fun way. Okay? So it's not really a science lesson per se, but it could be a fun activity. Okay? And look, to be honest, it contains the elements of science, so it could even go into a science lesson. Okay? They could propose new laws of nature that could improve the universe. So let's see, a parent's law. Okay, this is just an idea. When parents tell you to do or not do something, okay, for example, to stay out late, not to stay out late, okay, the universe opens a portal to let you observe if your parents actually followed this rule in the past. Okay, so, to see if they're hypocrites, so that when your parents say, you should be back. When I was young, I always used to be back at home by 7 p.m. You can click, go back in time and see if they really did this. Okay? Or if your parents are saying, you eat too much junk food. I never ate this junk food. Can I go back? Proposing a law like that might be a great idea during the lesson, so that they could, the students can understand the spirit of it. Okay, that we're not talking about serious laws, we're talking about fun laws, something that, I don't know, someone who is bullied inevitably will be bullied themselves, some sort of law of karma, as we often say. Okay, something like that could be fine. They might have to explain how it could be studied, okay, things like that. Okay, I think if they look at these sort of 10 scientific laws that you really should know, or a list of scientific laws, then they'll soon sort of work out the structure of this. And, it can be quite fun to sort of mimic the language of science for another activity, for a more fun activity. Using, as you can see below, these conditionals. Okay, if you heat ice, okay, if your parents tell you to do something, the universe opens. Okay, or with when. So these zero conditionals, as people mentioned in the chat before, would be really useful for these. So think about that, even if it's just for a lesson about the first conditional. Get them thinking about this, because the more you give them these fun ways of using the first conditional, the more they'll get used to it, and the more they'll also recognize it and be able to use it in more serious occasions too. I think finally, we've got a fun task-based learning activity which sort of draws on this. What will life be like in 50 years? How will technology change? Okay. This is an activity. Task-based learning is an idea that instead of giving lessons about grammar or about vocabulary with the target language as the subject of the lesson, so past simple lesson, first conditional lesson, vocabulary about science lesson, okay, which are great and which we need to do certainly, but occasionally throw in a lesson where they actually need to do a task. There's not necessarily a specific aim of the lesson apart from for them to use the language that they've already learned and to give you an opportunity to see if they're able to use it, okay? Because in the end, we're not teaching them the past simple just so they can pass a test. We're teaching them the past simple and the passive so that they can use it appropriately. And one of the uses would be in a scientific paper. A use of the future with will would be to talk about future predictions, okay? So these are really good fun activities to do as long as you do the sort of preparation and you're willing to structure the activity so that we don't just give the students half an hour to do something, okay? You know, we often break it up, do some lead-in activities with vocabulary, get them to do the first writing here, the present situation, feedback to the teacher so that the teacher can check, make sure they're on the right way, on the right road, and then lead them on to the next, coming back, separating them. These are the activities that are generally good in pairs. Okay. Who is it? Sylvia mentioned it could be really great for debate too. Okay, so these sort of things, whether it's the previous one about the scientific law or predictions about the future, could be great for debate. So predictions, you could say things about, you know, one team could be we're going to have a better life with great new technology that will make our lives easier in 50 years. And other people that say in 50 years, you know, our life will be worse. And, you know, each person has to tell us why. Okay? We can think about what problems could technology solve. So what's the present situation? So if we're talking about traffic, we're talking about pollution, we're talking about, I don't know, spending too much time studying, okay? Even things that cost too much, okay? How can technology solve this? So again, if I were going to do this, I would brainstorm problems students have, okay? Whether it's personal problems in the sense of bullying or stress for exams, or whether it's general society problems or global problems, you know, because in the end, if we have technology, one use of technology, not the only use, but one use of technology is to solve the problems that we've had, okay, that we have already, okay? Students think about the present situation, the problem, and some new tech that could solve this problem. So again, present situation, brainstorming in the class, getting them towards some problems that maybe technology can solve, okay? It could be done in a serious manner or more lighthearted. So again, if they're talking, they can invent some crazy technology, again, like the one we looked at before, some portal that takes you back into the past, okay? But it could also be some sort of technology, just like some new app that could work, okay? What AI could do, okay? Things like this, okay? So for example, okay, and again, this is just an idea. Again, with task-based learning, always a good idea to have your own version of this. So your own completed worksheet, which you could just put this information on the board and give that to them so that they've got a model, they know how it can be filled out. Okay? So the present situation, high students have lots of exams. Again, you could maybe expand on that. Okay? The problem, there are too many things to remember. History keeps getting longer. People keep discovering new things in chemistry, biology, physics. So we're always having more things to remember. So, we have to learn things that our parents didn't have to learn. Maybe a future technology could be a device that allows you to move the information from your brain to a specific part of the cloud. And then when you need that information, you can download it directly to your brain, ready to use. Again, here we're semi-lighthearted. Whether that will happen, I don't know. But it could be useful in that sort of sense that, you don't have to spend time memorizing it. It just comes back to you when you want, a little bit like a Wikipedia plugin into your brain, or AI plugin, I guess, we'll talk about. Okay? Something like that could be great. Get them to work on that. What's really important is that you need to push students into not just thinking about technology that already exists. To be honest, something like that, we don't have a device net literally, but even something like AI and Chat GPT can sort of do that stuff. If I want to ask it to explain to me about some scientific law, it can do that in less than a minute. So the key of an activity like this is to make sure the students are actually thinking about a problem that doesn't have a solution at the moment. Okay, because this is, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So, if there's a need, then sooner or later there'll be some sort of solution for it. Global warming, environmental problems are great things to think about, but as I said, they could even be more lighthearted. As our conclusion, okay, just think about the fact that technology can be an interesting way to introduce concepts of science into the classroom. Okay, so we often talk about technology as one aspect of science, but in the end, it is the thing that you often interact with most about science. Whether we're talking about new things like RNA vaccines, or which have benefited us all, okay, or we're talking about smartphones, AI, electric cars, hybrid cars, things like this, new forms of transport, all of this. These are the things that often interest students. You can even go back and look at some of the old predictions. You can, it's quite easy to Google, predictions about the future from the past and see how realistic they were, how they, they might seem realistic in some aspects, but not in others. Okay. So that could be really great. It leads into a lot of the vocabulary that you need for other scientific things. Okay, so whether, in the end, you could say that a lot of science comes down to physics or maths. Okay, so that can come help you there. Okay, a lot of vocabulary for science is similar between English and Italian. Okay, as you can see, the sciences, whether it's geography, geology, biology, physics, chemistry, we can see how closely they are tied to Italian. However, what is important is the fact that the pronunciation is important. Okay, we have words like biology, not geology. Okay, in English, and then things like chemistry, which again not so different to Italian, but we need to remember that the students in English might be used to reading ch as ch. Church, cheese, and then they see the word chemistry, and then they pronounce it as chemistry. So sometimes these words, we have a spelling which doesn't necessarily follow the rules of either Italian or some other things in English. Okay, sentence structure also can be more difficult. So more formal English, we're talking about these scientific articles. Often, to be honest, I found that students often don't have a lot of problems understanding them. You know, if we're talking about students who, you know, might have a B1 level of English but need to study scientific things for their thesis, they often don't have a lot of problems understanding them because, you know, the vocabulary is similar. Often the more formal sentences are not so difficult. Sometimes get into a little problem when we have passives. Simple passives like past simple, present simple, quite easy. Present continuous, past continuous passives, present perfect passives become a little bit more complex, but they are quite common in English. Okay, and then the amount of relative clauses and linkers that we use in scientific articles, thus, quindi, okay, or furthermore, things like that. These are things that they really need to learn. And once they get into writing these, also the forms, like in Italian, it's quite easy to do the impersonal, whereas in English, you have to sort of make a decision whether you're going to use a you form, a they form, or you're going to use a passive form. You know, it's not quite so simple, and we tend to sometimes use the passive a lot more in English than you'd use it in Italian. So even though they might understand it very easily, the actual use of it, how common it is in something is going to be crazy. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Okay, so I mean, in my career, I've done quite a few proofreading corrections for scientific papers that have gone into journals, and I can see the sort of problems. And sometimes it is difficult to express what people want to say from Italian. You know, you need to be careful that the sentence structure, a sentence in Italian can often be a lot longer than a sentence in English. Okay? We often use specific grammatical structures for specific purposes. Making your students aware of this early could help them in future careers. Okay, so as I said, the passive is really going to help students. Okay, it's something that is key to English. You know, we use a lot more than Italian. In Italian, you often just can use the active without the pronoun. You don't put emphasis on the subject, whereas in English we need a pronoun, so it emphasizes the subject. And plus, in Italian, you might have the impersonal, which can be substituted in English by the passive. Okay? So these sort of things, a little bit of groundwork now will really help them in the future. I find that making sure someone's comfortable with the passive is really going to pay off in the long term, because it's something that they often find very easy when they're reading. They can translate it quite easily, but to structure it to actually put it into their writing is becomes a bit harder. Anyway, that brings us to the end. What I'd like to ask you is just if you've got any suggestions for future webinars. We've got a few coming up, and not the least of which would be sometime I hope to do one on AI and chat bots. So we'll see about that. I don't want to do it too early if Chat GPT is still blocked. So hopefully they'll unblock that soon once they sort out these, I think it's privacy issues. But let me know in the chat if you've got any ideas. Okay. Thanks for your attention, and I hope you'll get a certificate of participation and a handout soon. If not, you can always write to me. Okay. Literature, I will. I've got a lot of requests for that. So literature for sure, and I'm going to try to put in a bit of literature in every webinar if it's appropriate. So when we have more general webinars, I often put in a thing about some poem or some book. Okay. Just a note that from now until the summer, until about the middle or the end of June, we're going to have these webinars every 2 weeks. I think you guys are probably busy, and we're busy, so we're going to reduce the frequency of them a little. But in 2 weeks, we're going to have one with my colleague Kath, about making vocabulary memorable. So how we can teach vocabulary and how we can help students remember the vocabulary. Okay, great one. Okay, so join us not next week, but in 2 weeks. Okay, thanks everyone, and I hope to see you there. Okay, bye bye.